car parks. Own a Rover P6 for 6 minutes and someone will walk up to you and say, "My uncle had one of those. Let me tell you everything about it." Starting in 1974, MG owners appear to be born with a sixth sense. They can smell another MG owner from 500 yards away and will materialize beside you with advice, spare parts, or biscuits. It's a hobby, yes, but also a family. The cheerful, slightly eccentric sort, who show up with tools when your car won't start. You don't just buy the car, you inherit the tribe. Reason 4, you learn patience, resilience, and a questionable kind of optimism. A British classic car will teach you important life skills, not CV skills. Not useful in the corporate world skills, but the real fundamentals, patience. When something works yesterday but not today. Resourcefulness when the part you need is out of stock indefinitely. And optimism when you see a puddle under the car and think it's probably fine. There's a special kind of self-growth that happens when you try to understand 40-year-old Lucas Electrics, often referred to respectfully as the Prince of Darkness, which should tell you everything you need to know, yet somehow you manage, you adapt, you learn the car's language, you celebrate small victories like a monk achieving enlightenment, and over time you realize the car has made you calmer, more patient, and better at shrugging off life's little inconveniences. Reason 5. British classics have personality, real unapologetic character. This is the biggest reason of all. A British classic car isn't just something you use, it's something you get to know. They have moods, preferences, favourite temperatures, and occasionally strong opinions about weather. An old Austin Healey has the cheeky grin of a mischievous teenager. A Jaguar E-Type has the sultry confidence of someone who knows they look incredible from every angle. A Land Rover Defender has the emotional range of a steel anvil, but a heart of gold. These cars are alive in a way that modern machines simply aren't. And because they have character, they give you character. You become the person who doesn't just drive somewhere, you arrive somewhere, accompanied by the sound of an old engine and a light spray of oil mist. People smile at British classic. They start conversations. They bring nostalgia, joy, curiosity, and a tiny splash of chaos. And let's be honest, the world is better with a bit of chaos in it. So why do you need a British classic car? Not because it's sensible, not because it's practical, but because it adds colour to your life. It slows you down, toughens you up, and makes everyday moments feel cinematic. It gives you stories to tell. It connects you to people you never would have met, and it reminds you, gently, persistently, that life doesn't have to be perfect to be wonderful. A British classic car will frustrate you, enchant you, challenge you, and occasionally leave you stranded. But it will also make you smile in a way almost nothing else can, and if that isn't a good reason to own one, I don't know what is. Classic cars attract many wonderful things, admiration, nostalgia, and unsolicited advice from strangers at petrol stations. They also attract myths, persistent, confident myths, the kind delivered by someone who hasn't owned a classic car since 1987, but feels very strongly about it. So, let's gently put a few of these to rest. First myth, classic cars are incredibly unreliable. This one usually comes from someone driving a modern car with 3 warning lights on and a software update pending. The truth is, most classic cars are very honest. A classic Mini, a Triumph, or an old Mercedes will tell you exactly what's wrong, often audibly, sometimes aromatically. Modern cars, by contrast, prefer vague threats and cryptic symbols. Reliability isn't about age, it's about maintenance, sympathy, and occasionally accepting that Italian electrics have personality. Second myth, you have to be rich to own one. Yes, if your idea of a classic car starts with air-cooled Porsche and ends with auction estimate, that might be true, but plenty of classics are wonderfully attainable. An old MG, a Rover, even a slightly scruffy BMW from the 90s can be cheaper to run than a modern finance agreement. The real cost isn't money, it's time, patience, and the willingness to Google things like, why does it only do this when it rains? Third myth, classic cars are terrible to drive. This is usually said by someone who expects a 1970s Alfa Romeo to feel like a new Golf GTI. Classic cars don't isolate you, they involve you. You feel the steering, the road, the decisions you've made in life that led you to this moment. And once you recalibrate, many classics are an absolute joy. There's a reason people still talk about how a Porsche 911 feels, or how delicately a well-sorted MG flows down a country road. Next myth, they're just toys for old men. Yes, there are flat caps, but there are also young owners, artists, engineers, and people who simply like things with character. Classic cars aren't about age, they're about taste and possibly stubbornness. Anyone who keeps a Lancia running in the modern world is not clinging to the past. They're committing an act of quiet rebellion. Another favourite, classic cars are bad for the environment. This one's more nuanced. Yes, they're not exactly carbon neutral, but most classics do a few thousand miles a year at most. They're repaired, reused, and kept alive rather than scrapped and replaced every 3 years. Sustainability isn't just about what you drive, it's about how often you replace it. A well-loved old Volvo, still going strong, has arguably done its bit. And finally, the biggest myth of all, classic car ownership is stressful. It can be frustrating, yes, but stressful. Only if you fight it. Once you accept that a classic car operates on its own schedule, something shifts, you stop rushing, you listen more, you plan better. In a strange way, these old machines teach you to slow down, and that might be their greatest gift. So maybe classic cars aren't impractical relics after all. Maybe they're reminders that not everything needs to be fast, perfect, or efficient to be worth keeping around. There's a lot of talk these days about electric cars. They're sleek, they're quick, they're silent. A bit too silent, if you ask me. And every week someone asks me, so are you getting an EV yet? And every week I give the same answer, eventually, but not yet, not for the moment. Because here's the thing, I quite like a car that sounds like a car. I'm not ready for something that hums quietly like a very patient washing machine. When I press the start button, I still want a little drama, maybe a grumble, maybe a cough, maybe a gentle reminder that pistons are doing something vaguely heroic under the bonnet. My friend's Tesla starts with all the emotional expression of a smartphone waking up from a nap. Is it efficient? Absolutely. Is it thrilling? Only if your definition of excitement is watching a battery percentage climb. Another reason I'm holding off is that I know myself far too well. If I owned an EV today, I'd be checking the range every 8 minutes. I'd become the kind of person who says things like, we can go to the shops, but only if we turn the heater off and drive like a monk. Some people get range anxiety. I'd get range melodrama. And then there's charging. I know it's improving. I know by the time I do buy an EV, it'll probably be seamless. But right now, I still enjoy the simplicity of filling up a tank in 90 seconds. Meanwhile, my friend with a Nissan Leaf spends his life sizing up car parks, like he's hunting for rare Pokemon. Oh look, a charger. Oh wait, it's broken. Oh wait, someone parked a diesel in the space. Oh wait, the charger works, but only when the moon is in the correct phase. I'm not emotionally ready for that kind of quest-based motoring. And then there's just the honesty of it. I like old cars, I like the smells, I like the quirks. I like turning a key instead of pressing a button that makes the dashboard light up like a Christmas tree. When I drive my old Porsche, or even a scruffy 90s hatchback, there's a sense of connection, a little mechanical handshake between me and the machine. It's messy, imperfect, Wonderfully analog, EVs are brilliant at many things, but messy and imperfect is not their design philosophy. Don't get me wrong, electrics are impressive. The Taycan is basically a spaceship that decided to go to Tesco. The Kia EV6 looks like it was designed by someone who loves triangles, and the Tesla Model 3, well, it's a very efficient way to feel like you're driving a minimalist Scandinavian cupboard. One day I'll get one. I genuinely believe electric cars will be part of my future, but for the moment, just for the moment, I'm staying with the rumbling, slightly leaky, occasionally dramatic world of classic and combustion powered cars, not because EVs are bad, but because I'm not quite ready to give up the noise, the character, and, if I'm being honest, the joy of a car that communicates constantly, even if some of that communication is help. My gasket's gone again. So yes, I'll join the electric revolution eventually. But right now, I'm enjoying the long, noisy goodbye. There's a strange calm that lives inside every classic car. It's not obvious at first. In fact, it's often hidden beneath rattles, warm oil smells, and the quiet suspicion that something electrical might be having a bad day. But once you spend enough time with an old car, you start to notice it, a kind of calm you don't really find anywhere else. Modern cars are very good at helping you forget you're driving. They insulate you, smooth everything out, and quietly take control, which is impressive, but it also means your mind stays busy elsewhere. In a classic car, that doesn't happen. Whether it's an old Porsche, a slightly dramatic Alfa, or a charmingly unpredictable Citroën, the car keeps you present. You feel the road through the wheel. You hear the engine thinking out loud. You're part of the process. And that's where the calm starts, because when you're paying attention to something real and mechanical, your thoughts stop racing ahead. You're not worrying about tomorrow's to-do list while guiding an old BMW through a corner or waiting for a carbureted engine to warm up properly. The car gently insists that you stay right here, not in a forceful way, just enough to bring you back. There's also comfort in the honesty of it all. Classic cars don't pretend to be perfect. A Land Rover will tell you exactly how it feels about potholes. A classic Mini will remind you that speed is optional and enthusiasm is not. Even something elegant like a Jaguar has no problem letting you know when it's had enough for the day, and somehow that honesty is soothing. You stop expecting perfection, you stop rushing, you adapt, and then there's the pace. Old cars move through the world differently. They're not in a hurry, and once you accept that, neither are you. You take longer routes, you leave earlier, you arrive calmer. Even a short drive starts to feel like a small event rather than a task to be completed. It's funny, we often talk about classic cars as stressful, temperamental things, and yes, they can be, but inside that unpredictability is a kind of quiet agreement. If you treat the car gently, it will do the same for you. It teaches you to listen, to ease off, to respond rather than react. So maybe the calm inside a classic car isn't something built into the dashboard or hidden under the bonnet. Maybe it's what happens when a machine slows you down just enough to notice where you are, what you're doing, and how good it feels to be fully there. And in a world that's always rushing forward, that kind of calm is quietly priceless. This car comes from a fascinating era in automotive history, an era before reliability was invented, not discovered, not perfected, invented. Back then, manufacturers weren't asking, will this start every morning for 10 years? They were asking far more important questions like, does it feel alive? Does it sound interesting? And can we make this with slightly thinner metal to save a few francs? And honestly, I respect that. I am not talking about a specific car. I am talking about cars from this period. whether it's a Citroën, an Alfa Romeo, a Triumph, or something equally optimistic. These cars were built with a very different philosophy. They weren't designed to be invisible appliances, they were experiences. Occasionally unforgettable ones, occasionally unforgettable for the wrong reason. You see, modern cars are very good at not involving you. They isolate you from noise, vibration, effort, and responsibility. Old cars do the opposite. They involve you in everything. Every vibration is feedback, every smell is information, every new noise is a conversation starter. Take a French classic, for example. A DS21 doesn't break down, it expresses itself. The suspension isn't leaking, it's redistributing hydraulic enthusiasm. The electrics aren't faulty, they're simply having a philosophical disagreement. British cars, of course, have their own charm. A Triumph or an MG doesn't fail. It reminds you that optimism is an essential part of ownership. You don't turn the key expecting certainty. You turn it hoping today is a good day. And when it starts, you feel like you've earned it. Italian cars are even more honest. An Alfa will tell you exactly how it's feeling, usually loudly and at high revs. It may not be reliable, but it will be passionate about it. And if something does fall off, you're almost impressed it stayed on for this long. The thing is, these cars were built before reliability became the goal. Back then, character came first. Engineering was brave, sometimes reckless, occasionally brilliant, and only loosely concerned with the future owner's sanity. And yet, this is the important bit, we forgive them. We forgive the cold starts that feel like negotiations. We forgive the warning lights that don't really warn you of anything. We forgive the way a simple drive somehow becomes a story, because when a car demands a bit of patience, it gives something back. It slows you down, it makes you pay attention, it turns driving into participation rather than transport. You don't just arrive somewhere, you experience the getting there. So yes, this car was built before reliability was invented, but it was built after charm, personality, and joy had already been perfected. And sometimes that's a trade-off worth making. At first glance, calling a classic car eco-friendly sounds like something said just before being escorted out of a dinner party. After all, these are machines that predate catalytic converters. Think fuel economy is a suggestion, and occasionally smell like unburnt optimism. And yet, stick with me, because classic cars might be one of the most quietly sustainable things an enthusiast can own. First, the greenest car is often the one that already exists. Modern cars are marvels of technology, but building them takes an extraordinary amount of energy. Mining materials, manufacturing batteries, shipping parts across the planet, and assembling everything in vast factories. A classic car, on the other hand, is already here. The carbon cost was paid decades ago. Keeping a 1970s Porsche 911 or a classic Mercedes W123 on the road isn't consumption, it's preservation. It's recycling at a grand mechanical scale. Instead of scrapping and replacing, you maintain, repair and reuse. You're not chasing the latest upgrade, you're making something old last longer. Environmentally speaking, that's surprisingly virtuous. Second, classic cars encourage moderation. No one daily drives a 40-year-old Alfa through rush hour traffic without a strong sense of self-reflection. Classics tend to come out for weekends, sunny evenings, or special occasions. They're driven less, cared for more, and appreciated deeply. That alone dramatically reduces their environmental impact. A lovingly maintained Mazda MX-5 from the 1990s, doing a few thousand miles a year, is hardly the climate villain it's made out to be, especially compared to a brand new SUV doing short trips to the shops while carrying nothing but a reusable bag and mild guilt. Third, classic cars resist the culture of disposability. Modern ownership often follows a simple pattern: buy, use, trade in, repeat. Classic car ownership flips that entirely. You form a relationship. You learn its habits. You repair rather than replace. You rebuild rather than discard. A Toyota Land Cruiser that's been running for 30 years isn't just transport. It's proof that durability is environmental responsibility. A Honda engine that keeps going with basic maintenance is a quiet protest against planned obsolescence. These cars weren't designed to be fashionable for 3 years. They were designed to endure. And yes, let's talk about the word investment. Not every classic car is going to fund your retirement, and that's probably for the best. But many classics hold their value precisely because they're not being churned through a rapid consumption cycle. A well-looked-after BMW E30 or early MX-5 isn't a depreciating appliance. It's a long-term asset that rewards care, patience, and restraint. So no, classic cars won't single-handedly save the planet. They still burn fuel, they still make noise, and they still occasionally drip oil in a way that feels personal. But they represent something modern life is desperately short on: longevity, repairability, and respect for what already exists. In a world obsessed with the new, the fastest, and the disposable, choosing to preserve and enjoy an old machine might be one of the most quietly eco-friendly decisions you can make. Plus, it looks better than a spreadsheet. You're listening to Classic Car Radio. If you want some quiet thoughts in the background, you're in the right place. There are plenty of complicated ways to feel better in life. Meditation apps, cold plunges, inspirational quotes from people who definitely wake up earlier than you. But there's one mood booster nobody talks about, mostly because the people who know are too busy trying to find parts on eBay, the classic car. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can something built in the 70s with the structural integrity of a sandwich and the reliability of a French electrical system improve your mood? Well, let me give you 3 very solid, very scientific reasons, or at least 3 reasons that work for me. Reason 1, classic cars make you feel like the main character. Drive a modern car and you're basically piloting a dishwasher with headlights. Drive a classic and suddenly you're starring in your own film. A Citroën DS makes you feel like a time-travelling diplomat. A Triumph TR6 convinces you you're more charming than you actually are. And a Porsche 928, well, that just makes you feel like you should have a yacht, even if the closest thing you actually have is a kayak from Decathlon. There's something magical about the way old cars look, smell, and sound. They give you instant character development. Even your bad hair days look intentional when you're climbing out of a 1970s Alfa Romeo. Reason 2, classic cars force you to slow down, and slowing down feels good. It's impossible to be stressed while driving a Morris Minor. The car simply won't allow it. Try rushing and it will respond by quietly shaking its head and possibly removing a piece of itself in protest. Modern cars make everything too easy. Half the time you don't even feel like you're driving, you're supervising. But an old car demands your attention in a way that pulls you out of your head and into the moment. You have to listen, feel, and occasionally bargain with it. And in that process, everything else, deadlines, notifications, the existential dread of why did Sharon schedule another meeting, fades away. It's mechanical mindfulness, but with better smells. Reason 3, classic cars create tiny adventures. Without even trying, you don't take a classic out just to buy milk. You take it out because maybe the sun is out, maybe you finished work early, or maybe you're feeling particularly brave and want to see if the old electrics are in a cooperative mood. Even a simple 5-mile drive becomes a story. Maybe you meet someone at the petrol station who used to own the exact same MGB, but in mustard yellow. Maybe someone gives you a thumbs up, which counts as more social interaction than you usually get in a week. Or maybe, just maybe, everything works perfectly and you spend the whole journey grinning like a child because your 40-year-old Volvo hasn't made a single alarming noise. Classic cars transform the ordinary into the slightly ridiculous, the slightly magical, and the definitely memorable. And that's good for the soul. So yes, they break, they leak, they squeak, and occasionally they demand rituals you can't explain to normal people. But they'll also lift your mood faster than any wellness practice I've ever tried. Because when you're behind the wheel of something old, whether it's a Beetle, a Jag, or some questionable French masterpiece held together by enthusiasm and rust, the world feels lighter. You feel lighter, and sometimes that's all the therapy you need. There are many wonderful things about owning a British classic car: the charm, the history, the way strangers nod approvingly at you in car parks, as if you've done something noble for your country. But before you buy one, there are a few things people tend not to mention, not because they're trying to hide them, more because British classic owners have accepted their fate and no longer see anything unusual about it. So here are 3 things nobody tells you, but you will smell permanently of petrol. This is not a metaphor, it's a lifestyle. Somewhere deep inside the soul of a British classic, whether it's an old MGB, a Triumph Spitfire, or a slightly too confident Jaguar XJ6, there is a faint but persistent desire to perfume its owner. You step out of the car after a lovely drive, take a deep breath, and there it is, that unmistakable blend of petrol, old leather, and maybe the ghost of a previous owner's pipe smoke. You'll think you've imagined it. Your friends will assure you that you haven't, and eventually you'll stop trying to get rid of the smell and simply accept that it's part of your personal brand. Number 2, electrical issues are a bonding exercise. Some people say the British invented romance. I say they invented character, building wiring looms. If you own anything with the words Lucas anywhere near it, you're not just a driver, you're in a long-term relationship with the Prince of Darkness himself. One day the indicators work, the next day they're on a spiritual retreat. Your headlights may or may not join you. But here's the thing, every time you fix something, or jiggle a connector, or threaten the car with a multimeter, you feel genuinely proud. Modern cars don't give you that. They give you error codes and judgment. A classic gives you opportunities for personal growth. And number 3, the real thrill isn't the driving, it's the starting. Every British classic owner knows that sacred moment. You sit down, turn the key, and hold your breath. Will it fire up instantly, like an enthusiastic Austin Mini on a sunny day? Or will it cough, think about life, and then decide that today is not the day? That moment, that glorious, unpredictable, slightly anxious moment, is the true heartbeat of British motoring. When it does start, you feel victorious. When it doesn't, you shrug because you've packed tools. You always pack tools. You could be going to the shops for milk, and you'll have a toolkit in the boot, just in case your Triumph decides it fancies a roadside picnic. But here's the secret. These 3 things point to British classics aren't perfect, and we don't want them to be. The little quirks, the smells, the gremlins, they're all part of a relationship that feels alive. Modern cars do everything flawlessly, and somehow that's less interesting. A classic gives you stories, it gives you character, it gives you a mild but constant sense of adventure. So yes, nobody tells you these